Oh, man. College football delivers again, doesn't it? Welcome in, everyone. Appreciate everybody being here to our post-game show for all the noon games Eastern time. Defense doesn't win championships. Defense still wins championships. Need some offense, but the defense can win the championship, as Oregon proved today, despite giving up over 600 yards of total offense to Ohio State. So the Buckeyes move the ball all day at will, except for getting into the red zone. So credit Oregon with a phenomenal effort today. This was a phenomenal effort by the Oregon football team, and we will lay out all the reasons why the Ducks came to play and came to win. And win one for the Pac-12, win one for their football program in attempting to get to the college football playoff for the first time since 2016 for the Pac-12. Welcome in, everyone. I will get to your comments and questions in just a second. We will run down the scores and everything that's transpired here in college football, starting in Columbus. So I want to let everyone know that, of course, this conversation is open to all of college football, as it always is. Ohio State fans, if you want to catch our Buckeye post-game coverage. Oregon fans, if you just want to gloat during our post-game coverage, there's certainly an opportunity to do that. Go to the Ohio State channel, the Oregon channel, the Big Ten channel. All three are simulcasting our Ohio State post-game coverage with Ori Benatar. So Ori's got you covered on Ohio State right there. All right. So we will have our coverage right up to the Iowa State kickoff. I believe they will be kicking in about 20 or 25 minutes. So let's do some work here. My impressions, let's start with the big picture. The big picture is that Oregon is a playoff contender. That's no surprise. We talked about it all week. Overreaction to week one. Did we not preach this all week and talk to all of you? And most of you agreed that the general public, the general college football fan, the general sports fan overreacts to week one. We knew that Oregon was going to put together a fine effort here. I don't know how many people I talked to that I said, wow, that point spread is enormous. It's way too big. Did I think Ohio State was going to win the game? Yeah. I gave it a 60-40, 65-35 range of a selection. So I did think the Buckeyes were going to win. They were my selection, but I didn't even hesitate in taking 14.5 points with Oregon. The Ducks were phenomenal in this game. As Mario Cristobal said right after the game, missing 5 starters on defense, including one of the very best in Kayvon Thibodeau and one of the emerging players in college football on the defensive side in Justin Flo. 5 significant players on defense lost, coming off a subpar performance against Fresno State. And I know the Bulldogs are a good, solid team, but still, Oregon should beat Fresno State by 3 touchdowns. So coming off that performance, having a lot of people question the Pac-12 and question Oregon, having to travel cross-country and play at 9 a.m. Pacific time in the shoe where the Buckeyes had not lost a regular season game since 2016 in Baker Mayfield. Despite all the adversity of injuries and jet lag and week one issues, Oregon gets it done. That was a phenomenal performance, the performance of the college football season thus far through a week and a half. Great stuff at the shoe in regards to just college football nation. And this is another thing I was pleading for during the offseason and have for 3 or 4 years, and that's for college football to be shaken up. Shaken up college football. So we've seen Clemson go down. Ohio State's already gone down. We're only in week 2. Oklahoma almost went down. So there is hope for that second or third tier. Welcome in again, Voice of College Football, breaking down Ohio State, Oregon, other matchups in the noon window. Of course, Pitt is a winner over Tennessee in particular. We'll run down the scores. Florida's in action as well as Virginia Tech, too. All right, let's get to your comments. Malachi, don't know what that means. Let's see. We got, it is currently 4:13, and I can only go back to 4:01. So I think we had some comments prior to this, but unfortunately, I can only go back to the comments that started at 4:01. We've got John Shields on the line, Premier Youth's on the line. Gary Lewis, good to see you as always. Web security, can't wait to hear the spin. There's never any spin here. So web security, you probably haven't been watching long enough or paying attention to know that there's no spin. We tell the truth, unlike anybody else. We tell the truth here, and we give the proper perspective. The proper perspective is that Oregon's a better football team than Ohio State. At least they were today. We don't know if they're a better team week to week, but they were better when it counted. It only counted today. So Oregon simply was a better football team. And I'll go through my notes, which is everything that you saw. Oregon, the better team, despite losing 5 impactful defensive players. Ohio State didn't play any defense till the last 3 drives of the game. So they finally stood up and gave their offense a chance to win the game, and then the offense bogged down the final 2 series. So there's the spin. Web security, if that's a freaking spin, is that Oregon's a better football team than Ohio State based on the only thing that matters. Do I think Ohio State's a better football team than Oregon? They probably still are, but it doesn't matter. The 2 teams played. They played in Columbus. Oregon won the game. So that's what matters and should be evaluated, is that Oregon's a better football team based on the results than Ohio State. So until Oregon trips up significantly, of course, they're going to be ranked ahead of Ohio State, and they will have placed themselves front and center in the college football playoff discussion, but they got to continue to go win football games. And we see it every year. And I think we're going to see it a little bit more than this year than other years, is that teams, a large portion of the time, don't lose to the teams that we expect them to lose to. So even though Oregon just beat by far the best team on their schedule, that doesn't mean they're going to go undefeated. That doesn't mean this Oregon team is going to show up every week when they have to face Washington and Cal and whomever they've got to play in the Pac-12 South Division. I know that there's no USC-Oregon game this year. So Oregon's schedule is not necessarily daunting. Mark, down go the Buckeyes. Well, at least on this day, Ohio State, of course, has a huge opportunity to play out the Big Ten. The Big Ten is probably the second best conference in America. So Ohio State season's not over. For anyone who would like to say that Ohio State season's over, they don't pay attention. That's, again, kind of a moronic comment that anyone would have to say that Ohio State season's over. Nobody's season's over at this point. But, yeah, Ohio State lost to a Virginia Tech team in 2014 that wasn't nearly as good as that Oregon team that just beat this Ohio State team. And, of course, that Buckeyes team won the national championship. So almost every national champion we've had in college football history has lost a game. Now, this Ohio State team needs to clean up some serious issues on defense. Some people are going to blame C.J. Stroud because he threw a late pick, and he held onto the ball a little bit in the late goings of this game. But C.J. Stroud is the least of Ohio State's problems. They have great receiver play. The running backs, I thought, performed well, although I was most impressed with the Oregon perimeter defense and the ability to tackle in space and tackle those Ohio State running backs. It was Mayan Williams early. It was Travion Henderson in the second half, and they played well. Henderson played really well. You can see why he's a phenomenal back and Ohio State's future. Oregon's defense won this game. Ohio State's defense lost this game. The Ohio State defense, the front seven, where was the pass rush for Ohio State? It was non-existent. It was awful, stalemated. The Oregon offensive line was phenomenal in this game. Phenomenal. Ohio State's defense finally came to play the final 2 series of the game, maybe the final 3 series of the game. But because the offense couldn't produce points, it was too little too late. So the Ohio State defense finally kicked it in with plays from JT Tuimoloau and Haskell Garrett made a play. Cody Simon made a play. They started to bat down passes. They got in Anthony Brown's face a couple times. Finally started to cause some missed throws, but way too late. Way too late. Yeah, I really didn't understand anyone who said that Ohio State would blow out Oregon. I just didn't see that. I thought Ohio State was going to win somewhere in the 1-score range. I think I gave somebody 38-31 earlier this week. Got David here. Malachi's here. Hip-hop R&B lover. Cristobal gave Kayvon those designer shades. My daughter commented on the designer shades from Kayvon Thibodeau. I was blessed to watch the game with my daughter. That was the best thing about the afternoon, is that my daughter came over and watched the game. So she pointed out the shades. I would have never noticed that. That's not something I notice. I would just notice a guy's got sunglasses on. Mr. HD, quack, quack. Stretch and Pick saying Combs got to go. Love those 600 yards of offense. That's trash. They were very vanilla in their approach. Web security, it's going to be, I think he's going back to the spin that he's expecting to see. I don't know if that was from me or from the Ohio State fans officiating. Well, there was a targeting, and I don't think this is a big deal because I don't like to see games that are impacted or determined by officiating. I don't like to see games that are decided or impacted greatly by officiating that has to be called. Of course, bad calls, that's a whole other category. Of course, I would hope none of us want to see bad calls, but I don't even want to see calls that are made that aren't football related, that are not football play related. Personal fouls, a false start, those types of things. And so I would not want to see a targeting play affect the game situation. And it almost did on Chris Olave. But the ironic thing is that was targeting. How that wasn't called targeting makes no sense. I think they should, after watching what I watched today, with about 3 minutes left in the game, Ohio State would, of course, been gifted a first down on the targeting call. If that's not targeting, then we might as well just get rid of the rule because that was classic targeting. We are seeing targeting calls where guys' headgear is just hitting another player's headgear and they're getting called for targeting. But that's not targeting. That was classic targeting. Now, I'm glad that it didn't get called because I don't like to see games decided by non-football related infractions, but that's targeting. So that was almost laughable that did not get reviewed. Sam Kim, guess I won't have to shave my head. Thanks, Oregon, for that. Cheryl, good to see you. Glad that you made it despite the Buckeyes' loss. And Cheryl, of course, a stand-up individual, of course. Malachi says the officiating was in Ohio State's favor. Well, it certainly was on the not on the non-targeting call. There was a hold on Thayer Munford with about 4 or 5 minutes left in the game, which Ohio State was driving. I thought that was pretty questionable. I didn't really understand that call. If that was called holding, like the adage says, you could call holding on every play of the game. I didn't really understand that call. Don't know any egregious calls on either side other than, again, if you believe in targeting and if there's a targeting rule, that was targeting against Olave. And I didn't see it with Thayer Munford, but we only got the one replay. I would like to see multiple replays on some of these plays, but they're running at a high tempo. So that was the one advantage of watching, another advantage of watching football back in the day when they huddled, as you could see several replays. D2K2J. UCLA beats LSU. Oregon beats Ohio State. Pac-12 looking strong. Okay, well, okay, the Pac-12 is looking strong in two spots. 2 out of 12 are looking strong. A number of them have not been tested. Arizona State, Utah, USC. They've not played anyone yet. So most of the conference has not played anyone. Cal lost to Nevada. Washington State lost to Utah State. Oregon State lost to Purdue. Oregon did not look good against Fresno State, but of course that result and that performance has been wiped out by this one. Arizona lost as expected. So let's understand that the Pac-12 came up with 2 enormous, monumental wins. And that really positions the conference in a better place than they've been in years, in the last 5 years, because typically their one big opportunity to shine early has been squandered. Auburn beat Oregon, Auburn beat Washington in 2018 and 19, and that pretty much set the tone of the season and put them in a hole in regards to big non-conference games and a college football playoff push. Gary, bad feeling when Oregon ran up the middle early game from their own 1. Yeah, Ohio State held Oregon down at the 1-yard line based on tremendous punting and punt coverage and let them off the hook both times. Credit Oregon again. Hip hop. You think Mark gets irate? Do I look irate? Yeah, probably mad. I'm disappointed. I want Ohio State to win. I'm an Ohio State fan, but my emotional attachment to the team and to the Ohio State brand is at an all-time low. I'm talking college football from a neutral standpoint with all of you. Yeah, I want the Buckeyes to win the game, but man, I enjoyed watching the game. I thought it was an amazing game. I enjoyed the game. Wanted Ohio State to win, but I enjoyed the game, and I enjoyed that things might be a little topsy-turvy this year. It's been so boring, and I enjoyed watching the game with my daughter, certainly. So it was a good time. Sooner Thrawn, big win. C.J. Stroud, 500 yards, 3 touchdowns. Buckeyes defense has lots of issues. Yes, they do. We thought that they were only in the back 7, but the defensive front looked bad too. They couldn't figure out how to run a defense to counter that Oregon crackdown block by the wide receiver on the left side that sprung Travis Dye a number of times, and C.J. Verdell for 3 touchdowns. Yeah, David, 600 yards of total offense should produce more than 28 points. It should. So from that standpoint, the offense did not produce enough, but the offense looks good. The offense, except for a pass rush late in the game in which C.J. Stroud held on to the ball a little bit too long, but it was desperation time at that point. C.J. Stroud played well. He just flat out played well. I see derogatory comments about C.J. Stroud here. Jeremiah says Stroud is trash. Jeremiah is apparently only watching Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady play on Sundays. That's probably the comparison. I believe this is an individual with a Michigan jersey on. Is that a Charles Woodson jersey? So we know where the Michigan quarterback position has been for the last 15 years. Son of Sarek, dude, 80% of those 500 yards were due to the wide receivers being elite, not the quarterback. Yeah, I don't think CJ Stroud is amazing or anything. He's got a lot of development to go, but he played his heart out. He played well. Did he play an A game? No. Did he play a B game? Yes. Could he have done more? Yes. But again, it's his second game, and he was playing a top probably 15 defense in the country, even without the 5 starters or the 5 impactful players on the Oregon defense. Again, to give a complete Pac-12 narrative, has the conference played well? Not necessarily. Have 2 teams played well on 2 given days? Yes. So they've had UCLA show up against LSU. We will find out how good LSU is. And Oregon with this is an amazing effort by Oregon. This is the game of the year thus far. This is the performance of the year thus far against what I'm pretty confident to say is still one of the 5 or 10 best teams in the country. Maybe not one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the country, but 5 to 10 range. We thought that Ohio State had an elite defensive line. We thought that they had an elite run defense, but Mo Ibrahim showed us differently last week, and Travis Dye and CJ Verdell, and mostly it was the Oregon offensive line that showed us that Ohio State's defensive problems run deeper and more across the board than we thought, not just the back 7. I'm going to run through my notes. This was mentioned by Joel Klatt at one point in the game, and I had already taken note very early. We saw it against Minnesota, then we saw it very early in this game. Stroud tends to throw high. Now, the final interception, I understand that he did overthrow that, but you see a lot of quarterbacks do that. Let it sail while they're on the run. He's probably running at 75% speed, and he didn't throw it with enough touch to throw it over the front line defender and in front of the back defender, and he didn't drop it in there. He sailed it. See a lot of quarterbacks do that, especially under stress. But CJ Stroud, when he sets and throws, he tends to throw high. Well, that exposes his receivers. That might be the biggest issue long term, is that it exposes his receivers to hits on plays in which he can throw the ball lower to the ground and they can protect themselves and catch the ball. Number 2, yes, he's either going to completely overthrow the ball, as he has a number of times, or he's going to cause tips for interceptions. And that almost happened a couple times where there was almost a tip for an interception because Stroud was, I don't want to say consistently high, but higher on his throws more often than he should be. I'm going to have a lot of notes here that probably at this point they meant a lot at the time, but things got washed away and it turned out to be a different narrative, so it didn't necessarily matter. But Stroud took off, and there was a personal foul late hit on Manning for Oregon, and Stroud completely baited him into that hit. Rowan McKinley got a hit on Cade Stover that stopped a 3rd down conversion, possible touchdown pass that proved to be big. Again, no Kayvon Thibodeau, no Justin Flo. Maybe Oregon wins this game by 2 or 3 scores with those guys. Who knows? Maybe Ohio State beats Oregon 9 out of 10 times, and this is the one time that they lose this game. Who knows? All that matters is that Oregon was a better football team without question on this day. Again, Ohio State, Mirko punted to the Oregon 1 twice. Denzel Burke continued to play well in coverage on a number of occasions, had some big pass breakups. Ohio State had no answer for that outside play where they had the crackdown block with the wide receiver. Emeka Egbukpa. No. Jackson Smith Najigba Jackson Smith-Njigba is coming into his own. He had a great day. He made some big plays. He looked good. They went to him on 4th down on a crossing route, made a huge play there. He made a great catch at the end of the 3rd quarter that converted a 3rd and long, a tremendous play in traffic across the middle. Jackson Smith-Njigba, Ohio State wide receiver, he's coming of age. Oregon got out of trouble at their own 2 on 3rd and 8 with a well-designed rollout pass in which they brought the tight end across the formation, threw him the ball. Garrett Wilson continues to abuse defenders. Garrett Wilson could probably be targeted another 10 times a game. It seems like Garrett Wilson's open all the time by a large margin. He's that good. Garrett Wilson might as well just catch 12 or 15 passes a game. Stroud missed him sometime in the 4th quarter. Yeah, sometime in the 4th quarter for a touchdown. I think they eventually scored on that one. Or was it one of those that they got into a 3rd and 4th and long and didn't score? But he missed Garrett Wilson long. There was a pass rush in Stroud's face, but I'm thinking Garrett Wilson's open by 4 yards. Like every time I look up, he's phenomenal. Noah Sewell and some other Oregon defenders, when they met Mayan Williams in the hole or Travion Henderson, those guys went backwards or they just stopped in their tracks. Like not overly big dudes on the Oregon defense. Again, Sewell's the guy that I took note of a number of times. Stopped those Ohio State running backs in their tracks. C.J. Stroud blew the final drive of the first half. That was completely mismanaged by him. I don't know what he was told when he went onto the field, but there were 34 seconds left. They were deep in their own territory, maybe around the 20 or 25. They made some plays. Well, they threw the ball to a back. It was either Henderson or Williams who made the wrong play, didn't get out of bounds. So that was bad. Then they also, he made a poor decision throwing the ball to Ruckert, and they were lucky to only have the 1 second on the clock. And so they had the 1 second, the clock stopped, they had a second. And so they're at the 35, they're at Oregon's 35. There's 1 second left in the first half. You make a decision there. Is our kicker good enough to make a 52-yard field goal? Then let's bring him on. Or let's chuck it to the end zone. Stroud wasn't cognizant of the time left in the first half. And I just noted like 3 times during that drive that he made a bad play, wasn't cognizant of the time. There's only 34 seconds when they took the field. And then, of course, the running back didn't help them out, not running out of bounds. So Ohio State blew that final drive in the first half. Second half, Marcus Crowley left early. That C.J. Verdell 76-yard touchdown run up the gut, my goodness, that's where that, I'm sure that it showed up a number of times where Josh Proctor was missed by Ohio State. He was a big miss on that defense. We talk about him quite often on the Ohio State show, of which I want to remind everybody, if you're looking for solely Ohio State football coverage, because I'm trying to give a more neutral Oregon and Ohio State and everything else that happened at noon, which I was guessing most of it would deal with the Ducks and the Bucks, but we will talk about the entire college football landscape as we will take off to Iowa State here soon. I didn't know. Why did I take this note? I didn't know why James was not called for pass interference against Olave on the 4th and 2. Oh, the 4th and 2, where Stroud had to throw the ball all the way across his body. He was being rushed. They had the 4th and 2. They probably should have run it. They had converted a couple 3rd and 4th and 2, but they went for the pass on this one. And Olave was interfered with. Klatt made the comment that he thought it was a good non-call. Joel Klatt knows his football. There's no question about that. But when you're pushing down a receiver and the ball's still about 5 yards away from arriving, that's pass interference. So that was a missed call. 4th and 3, about 13 minutes left. Garrett Wilson scores the touchdown. No, Garrett Wilson makes the huge play. Stroud really delivered on that play. That was his coming out party in regards to, we saw a number of times on 4th down that C.J. Stroud came through. That's all there is to it. You can be a detractor of C.J. Stroud and say he's trash and all this other crap, but he did deliver on 4th down time and time again. Where was the Ohio State defense? Again, no pressure on the quarterback until late in the game. Where were the tackles for loss? Created no turnovers, none. Again, the Thayer Munford hold, I thought, was a questionable call. But Brandon Swinson with a huge sack late in the game, one of the final drives. The Jerome McKinley, we talked about the Stroud overthrow. Jerome McKinley makes the play of the day on the 3rd and 18 overthrow that pretty much iced it, because then Oregon got the 1 first down. They punted back to Ohio State with 20 seconds left in the game. Phenomenal day for Oregon football. Congratulations to Oregon. Congratulations to the Pac-12. There was some thought and talk at the end of the game in regards to when was the last time the Pac-12 won this big of a game. That's pretty easy to determine. The last time the Pac-12 went to a college football playoff was 2016. That Washington team beat nobody outside the conference of significance. They beat Rutgers. That was their big non-conference game. 2015, the Pac-12 was not represented in the playoffs, so you got to go back to 2014. 2014 was when Oregon blasted Florida State in the Rose Bowl in the college football playoff. That was the last time that the Pac-12 won a significant non-conference game to this degree, a playoff impacting game. Hip-hop R&B lover, Stroud looked better than last week. He did. No question. Yes, Phil B. Notre Dame is being pushed right now at halftime. I think they're losing 16-14 to Toledo. Imagine that. D2, K2J, don't know how you come to the conclusion that Stroud is trash. Defense looking like Don Brown man every play. Stroud is not good. He just isn't. I don't get that. Yes, if CJ Stroud is the same quarterback at the end of the season that he is now, then I'll say he's a top 25 to 30 quarterback in the nation. It's kind of difficult with so much talent around him. But he'll continue to develop, most likely. Got to have some faith in Ryan Day. He's shown us something in developing quarterbacks and in running offenses. It will be fascinating to see how this Ohio State team responds. Now, we're not going to know necessarily that response next week or the week after, the week after, the week after, the week after. But there is Penn State. There is a Big Ten championship game. There is Indiana, possibly. And I know people are going to say Indiana got blown out by 4 scores last week. Again, overreaction to 1 week. Indiana's a good football team. They're going to have their say at times. Are they a great team, contending team? Probably not. I don't think they're that good. I think Indiana's top 25 good. I think Penn State's more like top 15 good. And Michigan's probably more like top 25 to 30 good. And so Ohio State's going to get tested some more. Maybe not to the degree of this team. Iowa came out with a big stop to start the game, and they'll get the ball in good field position. Need to lock in on that one, huh? David says, I can't believe Ohio State can't find 3 linebackers who can play. Well, the former USC player is evidently just about ready to step on the field, apparently. And we know that he's an all-conference type of player. Okay, more on CJ Stroud. Premier Youth Theater, Ohio State lost to a Willie Taggart recruiting class. Well, there is one in there. No Cal, Matt. Yeah, the Buckeyes lost because they didn't play smart. It wasn't because those weak sissies from the West Coast pushed them around for 4 quarters. Gary, note Fresno State faced both Flo and Thibodeau. Yes, 21 Fresno State D is trash, but still, good point. And they only faced Thibodeau for about a quarter and a half, but case in point. No, CJ Stroud is probably not Justin Fields, but there is, I'm going to say, no program in the country that has produced first round quarterbacks every time. Alabama's not even doing that. The last 2, yes, but I'm talking over the long term. What program in the country is producing first round quarterbacks every time? It looks like, of course, Oklahoma had 2 in a row. Well, 2 out of 3. Jalen Hurts was sandwiched in there. No, he was after Kyler Murray. So he had 2 in a row with Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray at Oklahoma. You had Tua and Mac Jones back-to-back with Alabama. You had, of course, Trevor Lawrence following Deshaun Watson at Clemson. So back-to-back quarterbacks, we've seen that a few times. First-round selections, those type of talents playing quarterback consistently. So Ohio State's most likely not going to have Justin Fields type play, even though they've got all these 5 stars. They don't most of the time come through to that degree. That's why it's good to have 3 of them. He has the same experience that Fields had when he started. Yes and no. As a starter, yes. Justin Fields did get to throw the ball a little bit in games and got to play in big games. Just didn't get to play where he was able to throw the ball downfield. So, yes, Justin Fields did not have meaningful experience prior to going to Ohio State, but he did step on the field in big games, and he did get to throw the ball a little bit in game action at Georgia. Oh, my goodness. There's the overreaction of the day. Lucas Abner. Now, you may turn out to be correct, Lucas, but you can't base that on a performance against one of the top 10 teams in the country. Ohio State played what is probably going to turn out to be one of the 10 best teams in the country, and they lost. Worst team since the 2011 team that went 6-7. I'm going to guess that this team is going to turn out to be better than the 2012 team. They went undefeated, but their performance was fairly questionable from week to week. But you might be right. Malachi, case in point, Tua, Trevor Lawrence are once-in-a-lifetime players. Well, they're up there. They're up there. This term generational quarterback gets thrown out a little bit too much because generational quarterback means that there would only be one, or maybe we could stretch it to a handful of guys playing at the same time. I hear that term thrown out all over the place. Illinois got blasted today in Virginia. Ohio State did basically give up on the run, but they were down by multiple scores. They were down by 2 scores. And when you're down 2 scores in the fourth quarter, you've got to throw it most of the time. Reasonable Gump, good to see you, man. Quack, 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 quack. Is that no? That's the Gator chomp. I don't know what they do. They don't really chomp down on anyone, but that's kind of the. We will see Hudson Card again tonight. Jeremiah says Card looks elite like Bryce Young. Elite Stroud in the Uiagalelei do not. It's amazing how many people thought DJ Uiagalelei was elite a week ago before the Georgia game. Overreaction. If I took the worst games and the worst plays from the greatest quarterbacks ever, if I took Patrick Mahomes' worst 15 or 20 or 25 plays, put them together, or his worst game, and said, this is the quarterback we got here, this guy sucks, overreaction. He's not the problem. That doesn't mean he's great. That doesn't mean he's elite, but he's not the problem. No. Well, D2K2J, man, this hurts a Big Ten playoff spot. Possibly. We're looking at the team right here that's on the field as a top 10 team against another top 10 team, Iowa State. Iowa, if they win this game, boy, they could really put themselves in a great playoff position going into or back into Big Ten play. If Ohio State is truly the best team in the Big Ten still, and most of us believe that they are, then yes, this puts the Big Ten in a bad spot because Ohio State's going to win the rest of their games. And so Penn State's big win last week at Wisconsin will probably get wiped out to a certain extent. Iowa's probably not playoff good. Wisconsin's probably not playoff good. It's made for some fun conjecture and situations and scenarios. Is Jalen Hurts CJ Stroud? Well, CJ Stroud better hope that he's Jalen Hurts. He's going to play in 2 national championship games, and he's going to go quarterback in the NFL as a starter. Mike says Stroud is not meeting the standard. Quinn Ewers playing a vanilla offense can score more than 7.5. We don't know that. This is what I would consider. I would say that if you believe that Ryan Day is a good coach, that he knows what he's doing, especially on the offensive side of the ball, and especially at the quarterback position, that you got to trust that he's playing the player that is playing the best and is the most capable of not just throwing the football. It's not just about throwing the ball. That's huge. It's about directing the offense. Michigan right now has a player in J.J. McCarthy who can come out onto the field like he did last week and throw like John Elway on a given pass, and everybody oohs and ahs and cheers and goes crazy, but he's not running the offense. He's not making decisions play after play after play after play after play. He's not leading the team. Anything else, folks? Anything else in here? Let's run down the scores. Yeah, maybe we'll have a fun conference race. Maybe Michigan State's better. Maybe Michigan's better. Maybe Penn State's back to being what they're supposed to be. And maybe the Big Ten Championship's going to be a challenge. Oh, the Rod Favre was telling us that Peo not Tiote. I forget how to pronounce his name. I got to phonetically put it out. I haven't had to pronounce his name since like June. Neo Tiote. That the Rod Favre says that he played today. Okay, I was not aware of that. Did not see him on the field. Didn't hear that necessarily notated. I watched every play of the game, but I had my daughter here. We were talking, and so I wasn't really zoned in as much as I typically am. So I thought that the odds were in favor of Ohio State losing a game at some point this season. That's why I picked them 11-1, and maybe they'll lose 2 now. But I thought that they would lose 1, and so this is no great shock, or shouldn't be, to anyone. Those people that thought Ohio State was going to win this, running away from everyone. I don't know that, and based on Ohio State's play on offense last week and how much they played and made big plays on both sides of the ball in the second half and ran away from Minnesota in the second half, in the fourth quarter, combine that with them being at home, Oregon having the injuries on defense, Thibodeau, Flo, and others, and looking bad against Fresno State. If that's all you wanted to take into consideration, yes, I can see why people thought Ohio State was going to roll. But that's a reaction to week 1. That's an overreaction to week 1. All right, on to the scores. Florida beat South Florida 42-20. So that let me down in regards to a point spread pick, because Florida was a, I believe, 26-point favorite. They led by 35 at half. And then they just kind of caved in and let it go. And it looks like Anthony Richardson led Florida in passing with 152 yards. So again, Gators win it over the Bulls 42-20. Virginia Tech leads Middle Tennessee 35-7 with about 5 minutes left in the game. Near the end of the third quarter, Toledo 16, Notre Dame 14. Georgia on top of UAB in the second quarter, 28-0. Almost halftime, Texas A&M and Colorado. Buffs lead 7-0. Okay, Ohio State fans, you want to look at a young quarterback who's struggling, and I haven't seen any of the play today, of course. I've been here, but also last week. Texas A&M's got a freshman quarterback in Haynes King, who also has been on campus as long as C.J. Stroud, and they've scored nothing against Colorado, not against Oregon, nothing against Colorado, not against a great Oregon defense, but against Colorado. They've scored nothing. And Haynes King went 1 for 2 for 8 yards. And I don't know if he got injured. Maybe that's the issue. Zach Calzada, 6 of 14 for 44 yards. Those two battled it out until the final week of fall camp. So Calzada had the better arm. King's the better athlete. That was their decision. I would love to rewatch the Ohio State Oregon game to gain a better perspective, but it's just basically not going to happen. Just too much to determine. Cincinnati and Murray State. I find this amusing because when I ranked Cincinnati, just based on their performance against Miami of Ohio as number 22 in the country, people blew up and went crazy and jumped off bridges. and it's 7-7 against Murray State right now. Okay, Penn State leads Ball State 17-3 near halftime. Alabama on top of Mercer 21-0 early second quarter. Iowa State, most likely the remaining game of the day. Auburn beat Alabama State 62-0. Other games around the FBS. Tennessee and Pitt appeared to play a pretty entertaining game that I may watch on replay a little bit later. Rutgers leads Syracuse 14-7 at the Dome. Duquesne on top of Ohio 25-20. That's in the fourth quarter. Purdue 35, UConn 0, end of 3. Central Michigan leads Robert Morris 35-0. Georgia has scored again. They lead UAB 28-0. Texas A&M's on the board at the end of the second quarter. It's 7-3. Boston College over UMass 14-0. Nebraska on top of Buffalo 14-0 in the second quarter. Cal leads TCU as a 12-point underdog. Golden Bears lead on the road against TCU 19-7. Temple 21, Akron 17 near halftime. Air Force Navy, love these military battles. 7-3. That game is close to halftime. Bowling Green over South Alabama 8-3. 14 minutes left in the second quarter. And again, in one of the games of the day, Iowa State. Cyclones just made a big play on defense. 6 minutes left in the first quarter. No score. Not surprising. No score. Super chat coming in. Appreciate that so much coming in from Isaac Adkins. What is wrong with the defensive line? That's the one thing that's confusing me about this defense. Absolutely. Oregon's offensive line controlled this game. They completely outplayed the Ohio State defensive line. If there was one aspect to this game that was a bit surprising, I didn't think that Ohio State's defensive line was just going to run over and terrorize Oregon's offense, because I knew that the Ducks' starting offensive line was experienced, brought back a ton of starts, something in the 65 to 70 range, but that Ohio State's defensive line was completely ineffective until late in the game. The last 2 or 3 drives of the game, they started to make plays. Finally started to make plays. JTT had a batted pass. Haskell Garrett got into the backfield a couple times to disrupt the passer. And they started to make some plays along the defensive front, hold the running game down to 3 or 4 yards per carry. But that was much too late. Yes, the defensive line is a major disappointment. We know that the back seven on defense struggles, that the secondary struggles, that the linebackers struggle, and they shouldn't to that degree. But the defensive line brings back playmakers. Haskell Garrett's one of the best in the nation. Zach Harrison, of course, made the biggest play of the season thus far on a winning note against Minnesota. But just to not consistently or even at all ever get pressure on the quarterback until there was 5 minutes left in the game. I thought that play after play after play after play, I thought, isn't somebody going to not even get home? We're not talking about them being close to getting home. We're talking about them not even getting close. We talked about Anthony Brown. We're looking at Anthony Brown play after play, just having no issues. That is the biggest surprise of the game for me, the Ohio State defensive line. Again, I knew that the Oregon O-line was too good for them to terrorize, but to not on maybe a third of the plays, on a third of the dropbacks, to affect Anthony Brown, to flush him out of the pocket, to get in his face, nothing. It was bad. Zachary, good to see you, man. Cincinnati fan here. We play like this, we lose to UCF. Of course. Yes. Don't want to overreact. I just thought that was an intriguing score against Austin Peay right now, 7-7 at halftime. Jack Sawyer did not play. I thought he was out there late in the game. I know that he was out there at least one play. I definitely saw him one play. They played Bash a very vanilla defense, and I don't know if that's because they can't comprehend the defense, but they are not doing much. It's not exotic. They're not trying much of anything. They're playing it straight. Yeah, Elias notes that Sawyer was there. There was a phantom holding call on him late in the first half. Yes, I do remember that. We were watching the play from behind the play. Sawyer was coming from the right side of the offense, swooped around. I did think, much like the Thayer Munford play, I thought that was a bad call against Oregon. That was, Elias, a bad call. Absolutely a bad call against Oregon. I don't know why that was any different than any other play where the rush end tries to go to the outside and gets steered to the ground and tries to bend too much, and his momentum pretty much took him to the ground. And unfortunately for the Ducks, Oregon completed a 3rd and long on that play for a first down. Anthony Brown found somebody for a big gain over the middle that was taken back, and that helped Ohio State, I believe, stop the drive. The Rod Farva, we lost straight up, no excuse. Our defense has major issues. Yes, it does. Bash. Also, that hit was targeting on Sewell, but I like the refs not calling it. They don't want to decide the game, but Sewell hurt himself. That's why it's a rule. So, Bash, I made the same comment. I don't want to see the game, any game, decided by a penalty, especially a penalty that's a non-football related penalty, meaning it's a personal foul or it's a dead ball situation. I don't want to see that. But it was targeting. It should have been called. If there is a targeting rule, if there's anything about targeting that's very clear, it's that if you drop your head and use the crown of your helmet to make contact with an opponent, that's targeting. Yeah, the containment was atrocious. Badgerin, Bournemouth fan. Absolutely not, Abdul. That targeting or non-targeting call is not why Ohio State lost the game. They would have been gifted a first down had that been called, and it should have been called. But again, I'm better with the way it is right now that wasn't called, because I don't like to see games called because of that. And again, for anybody who called me biased 2 years ago in the playoffs, really doesn't understand or doesn't take enough time to watch the channel on a regular basis to know that I call it both ways. So in this case, yes, I don't want the targeting call against Oregon or on Ohio State that would have helped Ohio State against Oregon, but that was targeting. If that's not targeting, I don't know what Shaun Wade running into Trevor Lawrence, barely dipping his head, is. So I would understand and do understand in the moment how difficult it is to call targeting for these officials. The game's just too fast. But when they get the advantage of replay and you can watch it over and over and over from a bunch of replays, you should not get targeting wrong. Troy says the defense sucked. The offense left way too many points on the field. That's why they lost. Tat, defensive coordinator, should be fired immediately. Yeah, Bash, that's the point I made off the top. I'm an Ohio State fan. I want them to win the games, but I've been begging for this sport to give us something different. And so that was good to see. It's good for the sport for Oregon to win this game. It really is. It would be great for the sport if somebody could beat Alabama and somebody could beat, let's say, Oklahoma. And let's really churn this thing up with losses. Let's get some 2-loss teams in the playoffs. Let's make this difficult on the committee. Let's get Cincinnati to run the table. Maybe Cincinnati goes undefeated. Maybe Cincinnati's the only undefeated team in the country. That would be funny. All in all, I don't believe that the Pac-12 officiating favored either one of them. There were missed calls, or there were calls made that I didn't believe should have been made. So you had the targeting that was not called that should have been called, because it is targeting, even though I don't like that rule per se, but it was targeting. You had a holding call on Thayer Munford that I didn't think was good on Ohio State. But you also had an Oregon holding call by the right tackle against Jack Sawyer. That was a bogus call. Besides that, any other calls that really mattered that were bad? That's pretty not, that's not necessarily a bad showing. Now, this is where you really need to watch the game again. You need to watch the game over and over and over, as the coaches do, of course, and then the analysts who work on these games. If you ever notice listening to the TV analysts during these games, they weren't able to watch that team the week before because they were doing another game. Weren't able to watch them live, but then it's their job to watch the game over and over and over. And of course, they arrive at the game site a couple days before to go to practice, to talk to the coaches, to get the intel. And I would love to be in a position where I could watch these games a number of times throughout the week and get a better assessment of, okay, I'm going to watch this. I'm going to slow it down. Let's watch the Ohio State linebacking core. Let's see how poorly they played, and how did they play poorly? Did they all play poorly? And we tend to group things together, and it's not our fault, but you have to say the Ohio State secondary didn't play well, or the defensive line didn't play well. Well, they're not all the same person, so some of them played better than others. There's no doubt about that. But that Oregon offensive line against the Ohio State defensive line, that was astounding. That was the number one reason why Oregon won the football game, in my estimation. Their offensive line controlling the Ohio State defensive line and giving Anthony Brown, until the last couple drives, all the time he needed. Every play, all the time he needed. And I'm not just talking about sufficient time, like 1, 2, 3, 4, throw. Like, that's plenty. No, giving him like as much time as he needed to throw the ball. If that was 8 seconds, if that was 4 seconds, the next, whatever he needed, they gave it to him until the final 3 drives of the game. Unfortunately for Ohio State, their offense was pumping, clicking, scoring, trying to keep up with Oregon's offense. And then Ohio State's offense finally kicked it in, or their defense finally kicked it in with some stops. And then Ohio State's offense stopped clicking, and Oregon's defensive front started pressuring CJ Stroud. So both teams, even though Oregon's pass rush was much more effective throughout the game consistently, Ohio State's just wasn't there, period. Man, with the amount of talent on that Ohio State defensive line, that they could not put pressure. I'm not talking about getting sacks, just talking about a hand in the face, a tug on the shoulder as you go by. Nothing. Awful. Awful. All right. Notre Dame's up on Toledo by 1 point. Iowa State just kicked a field goal near the end of the first quarter. They lead Iowa 3-0. Good games across the board, but those are the two that really count right now. We'll be back a little bit later tonight. I'll probably pop in about 7 o'clock, 7:15, something in that range right before the primetime game. Michigan, Washington is one of them. Arkansas, Texas, we really want to see. And then late night tonight, we'll come back and take your calls on the entire day of college football. And we appreciate everybody being here. We've got about 200 on the line. We have post-game coverage like you would not believe. So if you want to talk more Ohio State, Oregon, head on over to the Ohio State channel or the Oregon channel or the Big Ten channel, any one of the three. Check out Ori's Ohio State post-game there. We are going to have post-game, folks, on Texas A&M. Florida post-game should be starting right now. Let's check it out. Let's check it out right here. Let me see. Okay, it looks as though our Ohio State post might be over. Over on the SEC channel right now, we've got Florida, South Florida postgame going on right now with our guy Dylan Denmark on the SEC channel. So head on over there, Florida, South Florida postgame. And we're going to have Alabama postgame, Georgia postgame, Texas A&M postgame. Notre Dame fans postgame. Desmond, my man, Desmond, look at that. Make sure to give the channel a thumbs up before you go. Thank you so much for that. Keep in mind, more importantly, even than that, join Desmond after the big Michigan-Washington game over on the Michigan channel following the game. Desmond does an amazing job. Catch him on the Michigan channel following the Wolverines and the Huskies. Also, we've got Nebraska post following their matchup with Buffalo. The Huskers off to a 14-0 lead. Yay! Oklahoma post tonight. Florida State, Miami. Only an 8-point favorite against Appalachian State. Could we have an issue with the Canes tonight? Possibly. All right, great to see everybody. Keep those notifications up and running because I'll see you very soon right here at the Voice of College Football.